Hello, job seekers. Melanie here with CGL Recruiting. Today we're going to be talking about retained search firms. Retained search firms handle recruiting a little bit different than contingent recruiting firms and just your hourly placement firms. So let's kind of break those three classifications up, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper into those retained search firms so you're going to know how best to make yourself available to them and on their radar. Okay, so when we talk about the three classifications, let's start first with the staffing firms. And so staffing firms, again, are the ones that do more hourly or direct labor or temp to perm, temp to hire type situations. And so for the retained search firms, they're about at the opposite end of the pendulum from there. So let's talk about what's more in the middle. In the middle, we have what's called contingent firms. And contingent firms generally, there's exceptions to every rule, but generally are paid based on the actual placements that they do. So they receive a percentage of the salary that you get from that company. They get a placement fee that is a certain percentage of that. For example, they may get 20% or 30%. So let's say, for example, you get offered a job and they offer you $100,000 and the firm has a fee of 25%. That means they're going to get $25,000 for doing that placement. Now, I know it sounds like a lot, but there's a lot that goes into that and all the tools they have to use, and they only get to keep that money if you actually accept the position and then you stay past a guarantee date. So there's a lot of work that contingent recruiting firms do that they don't end up getting paid anything for. So now let's talk about the other side, the one that we're going to focus in on the most today, and that is your retained search firms. So when you have a retained search firm, the company makes a commitment to pay that search firm regardless of whether or not they actually make a placement. And so the trust level between the retained search firm and the company has to be very, very high. And generally, because companies can do this contingent, when they're looking at a retained search firm, and we're only talking about compensation and fees at this point, when you're talking about those retained search firms, they generally are looking at positions that are higher level. They're either director, VP, C-suite, board member, president, or a position that is very, very specific. So a chemist that has an organometallic focus, that it's a very, very difficult or harder type of search. The other thing that people use retained search for more than some of the others is if something is off the grid, like they're going to be changing out a person in their team, and so they want the search done incredibly confidentially. A lot of times they'll use a retained search firm for that kind of work as well. So in the retained search firm, you get, if you are that firm, you get that money whether or not you're actually successful or not. If the company in the end decides not to hire anybody because they change direction, the retained search firm still gets the same amount of money. Now, I will say that they still have to do a great job, right? If they don't do a great job, then nobody's going to use them again. But I think it's important that you, as a job seeker, understand that their motivation is a little bit different and their behaviors tend to be different. Because when you're dealing with the other side of the recruiting firms, they are very driven about closing down the role and getting through as many people as possible. And for some that are paid commission only, it drives bad behaviors, right? Because they don't follow up like they should because they're not getting paid to do it. When you deal with a retained search firm, you tend to get a much better handhold most times. Now, retained search firms, some of them are quite large and some of them are very small boutique. I know one that's here in Houston that I think very highly of that only has 3 people in it in the entire firm. And then you have some that are much, much larger that are worldwide retained search firms. So let's talk about how you then as a candidate interface with these different retained search firms. In general, they don't tend to place the same type of job postings that you see at the other levels. They are much more strategic and targeted about how they recruit their individuals. So you're not gonna, which is why you don't see a lot of postings for presidents of companies, right? Now, they may choose for some roles to put postings out there. It's usually what we call a blind posting. It does not release any company information about the hiring company. It's very more 30,000 foot level. So what they tend to do more on the retained search firms is search for people. And so whether that is through their advanced network that they already have established, whether that is by old school, picking up the phone and calling certain individuals saying, hey, you know this person, and working their industry or profession network, or what happens nowadays is they find you through tools like LinkedIn, or they find you through the web of, well, this person was on this board for this other company. I wonder if they'd be interested in this board position. So it tends to be a much stronger search first as opposed to any type of posting, which is why if you are in those executive positions and you've been in job search and you're looking out there at the different job postings, you're like, why am I not seeing roles at my level? It's not that they're not necessarily out there, it's because the recruiting path into them is different. So if you are a candidate that you believe that retained search firms are going to be where you're going to find the majority of the jobs based on what you're looking at, your best bet is to make yourself as accessible as possible. And this doesn't, LinkedIn, I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very, very important, but it's not the only thing. So yes, you need to have your LinkedIn profile done incredibly well so they can find you amongst the 700 million profiles that are out there. That is very important. And a lot of executives tend to put not a lot of detail and data on their LinkedIn profile, and I truly believe that is a mistake, because you're utilizing it not as your resume, you're utilizing it as a way to get found from the 700 million profiles. So if you are at that more senior level, you do need a detailed LinkedIn profile so those different retained search firms can find you. And then the second way that they do all that searching and finding is very, very network based. And so if you are at that senior level, the more visible you are in your network and in your industry and profession, the better chance you have of being found. So if you are an engineer that is, a senior VP of engineering and a retained search firm is going to work for you, you need to be active in your engineering profession. You need to be, doing publishings or articles or doing speaking engagements at different things. The more you do to raise your visibility, the more that some of these retained search firms, as they're working their network and talking with people, are going to have your name potentially come up as a viable candidate. So again, if you are going down these retained search firms, you need to look, one, at make yourself accessible and visible, and two, work your network and visibility like crazy. All right, job seekers, as always, I hope this was helpful. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing that now. It'll help you make sure you don't miss any of our great videos. And if you feel like this data was helpful, please give us that thumbs up in the end. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.